pension scheme that was disbanded in 2004 has made a comeback in a slew of poor promises being made by various political parties. Some states, especially Congress-run states, have even gone back to the old pension scheme versus the national pension scheme. Now, recently, the Punjab Chief Minister Bhagwan Mann said the state of Punjab may revert to the old pension scheme. Arvind Kejriwal has echoed that promise in Gujarat. Rahul Gandhi has echoed that promise in Gujarat. Now, this announcement or these slew of promises have led to a lot of concern in some quarters. Why are some states reversing back to the old pension scheme? And is it a bad idea when you look at it financially? That's the question that we're asking today. To speak with us on this issue, I'm joined now by Madhavan Narayanan, senior journalist, Mythili Bhusnurmath, consulting editor, ET Now, Tejas Mehta, political commentator, and Deepak Shenoy, founder and CEO of Capital Mind. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us today. Let me go across to Deepak first, who's made his views very vocal and very clear on why he's alarmed by this return to the old pension scheme or this promise. Deepak, tell us, what's the problem?
So I think, Tamanna, my view is this is the concept of moving from old pension scheme where everyone was guaranteed, government employees were guaranteed 50% of their salaries as pension for, as long as they lived, created a very large pressure on the exchequer, the treasury, because effectively the future governments would continue to have to pay this. And the US has already seen this as a problem. A lot of Western countries have seen it. So we had to move from a defined benefit, which is this half of your last salary kind of concept, to a defined contribution, saying you contribute, let the contribution grow through your time you're working. And when you retire, your contribution would have grown to a size that can take care of your pension needs for the rest of your life. So the government doesn't have to take care of you. This defined contribution scheme releases the exchequer from future, financial crisis, because you may not be able to accurately predict. And therefore, most governments, in fact, don't even plan for it. They just leave it to the next government. The move was great. It was in 2004, and because they couldn't force the existing people to move on to it, they just said new joinees will get the 2004 onwards the new pension scheme. It was renamed to the National Pension Scheme later, opened out to everybody. So you and I can also have it, even if you're not government employees. And now they're saying, some of these states are saying that we want to go back to the old pension scheme. It's very simple. Guaranteeing 50% of income plus DA increases year on year is a great thing for government employees, but produces a large stress on the exchequer. And what it does is it forces the pressure onto future governments, which means the current government can do whatever they want, mismanage financially, and they don't have to pay or even contribute to pension funds and leave it as a borrowing mechanism for a future government to take care. So it's a retrograde step. We should go back to we should be in defined contribution schemes as the rest of India, which is not working in the government sector, is.
What I find interesting is that this is being trotted out as a poll promise ahead of upcoming elections, assembly elections in Gujarat and Himachal Pradesh. Punjab is saying they will revert to it. Of course, Chhattisgarh and Rajasthan have already reverted to it. Madhavan, why is that? Are government employees such an important voter base?
Tamanna, I'm glad you asked that question, because the trick lies in the fact, I'm sorry to get a bit abstract, but there are enough people, Tamanna, who come on your shows and talk about the importance of fiscal discipline. So I will always add value from where they won't speak. It's not that I disagree with them. It's just that I lay bare the landscape of the political economy, because that's where the map lies. The simple fact is that government employees are extremely critical for delivery of government services and support for political masters. So they are what I call the hidden trade union of India. Okay, they can, if they are motivated, do very well for the elected party. But it's part of what in corporate culture we call stakeholder management, in which government employees are not, voters. The voters are like shareholders, whereas government employees are literally like employees. So just as a company would keep employees happy while keeping shareholders and customers happy, a smart political system knows how to manage the stakeholders. In this, the problem, Tamanna, is that we have, I see this pension debate as part of the larger debate on freebies, on which much has been said and written. So it's all about how do you cut the cake called the tax money and why. There are 2 points I want to make here. First is that competitive populism has become the order of the day, in which every government or every political party tries to blame the predecessor for something while taking credit for something that the predecessor did. Right now, whether you take the Central Vista project, whether you take demonetization, whatever you take, the Modi government will blame the Congress government, and the Congress in turn will try to take credit for something they did or try to reverse something. And this is part of the game of competitive populism. Now, the problem is it affects fiscal discipline, as Deepak Shenoy rightly said. But in politics, it seems like beggar thy neighbor kind of approach is par for the course, because things have become very bitter. And the stakes are too high in Gujarat and Himachal. And therefore, you
Which is why
promise.
perhaps you have seen, I think, people like Deepak Shenoy and others who follow the economy who have expressed concerns. I haven't seen the BJP, for example, come out and say, no, why should we go back to the old pension scheme? Nobody wants to take off a
Ask
whole
that
host of
question.
government employees, I suppose.
Yeah, Tamanna, it's very good you asked that question, because I remember covering the economic reforms of the 1990s when the Narasimham Committee recommended certain steps to reform banking. At that time, public sector bank employees were a critical vote bank, as well as what I call the vocal bank, lower middle class voters with a huge lung power that can actually disrupt the economy and politics. When that happens, the ruling party, even the party that kind of silently has one view, cannot possibly express it, because at
Okay.
that time BJP's trade unions opposed the
Right.
Narasimham
So
Committee report.
it will be difficult to politically explain why you don't want to go back to the old pension scheme. But the fact is, the politics is on one side. Can our states afford to go back to the old pension scheme? Is it fair to go back to the old pension scheme? Mythili, I'd like to have your view on this.
Well, Tamanna, is a classic case of completely irresponsible fiscal populism. No state, including the center, can afford to go back to the old system as it existed, because the fact is that country after country all over the world move from that defined benefit or pay as you go scheme, where basically current revenue funded these pension liabilities, to the defined contribution scheme. It was after much debate all over the world that countries increasingly moved, and India also made that shift from 2004. And it is not as if the government is not chipping in. Mind you, for every government employee who joins a new scheme, the government's contribution, as much as 14%, is given by way of government share. So it is not as if the government is not doing anything. And today, if you see, the government employees are a very pampered lot. Look at the number of job applicants you get for every single government job, whether it is that of a driver or whether it is that of a messenger, simply because these government jobs are so attractive despite the new pension scheme. Because the kind of perks that you have in government jobs, you don't have anywhere in the private sector. And states simply cannot afford it. There is, in fact, a very interesting study done by the State Bank of India Economics Department, where they say that if all the states were to go back, and this is, mind you, turning the clock back on very vital economic reform that was done, it'll come to almost as much as 13% of our GDP. That's more than the fiscal deficit of the country today. So it is highly irresponsible. Unfortunately, political parties in India lack maturity. The population, the voting public, is also not able to see through their games. And in the process, succeeding generations will suffer hugely, because vital capital expenditure is not being done because you're spending so much on wasteful current revenue expenditure.
What is an important point here, Tejas, is why the old pension scheme is being promised when the rest of the country, apart from those who are government employees, have to deal with the new pension scheme, or the same way. Basically, you contribute some amount of your earnings every month, and then they are invested in the PF by the PFRDA, maybe in market-linked policies or schemes, etc., why the special treatment expected for government employees? And is that fair? Because some of their concerns are that ever since the old pension scheme was taken out of the equation, they are not sure about the returns they get.
Well, clearly, as Madhavan put it, it is politics is about running a government is about the bureaucracy, and they form a very. That's why the BJP are not hearing much from them. But certainly, the AAP, which needs to gather, increase their vote bank in Gujarat with the Congress dissipating there, and in Chhattisgarh, also Jharkhand, also we are seeing that similar demands are being made in all these states with the BJP growing its presence, then being the most prominent contender, they need to get as many vote banks as possible. And this is typically a vote bank. One must see it that way. But to add to the previous point about the fiscal imprudence, just look at Punjab. Punjab and Bihar are one of the worst states in India as far as the fiscal deficit is concerned. The pension bill itself, after 19 years after the new pension scheme came in 2004, is as of today 11,000 crores. Still the backlog is still running, and now this will keep increasing. The debt burden of the entire state is 2.6 lakh crores. Power subsidy 18,500 crores will hit 20,000 crores. Now, another question which you asked very importantly is what is the politics behind this? Of course, we know it's a vote bank, but also the national movement for old pension scheme is all these bureaucrats and babus all together. They have announced publicly that they will support any political party which brings back OPS in Gujarat and Himachal. So directly you have a political, motivation, political incentive.
But that's why I asked this question. Are they such a pronounced vote bank? Are they such a large part of the voter base?
No, but the call
because
has
I
been
can
made.
understand free electricity and promising free electricity as a poll promise where it will benefit a large number of people, even though the fiscal cost is huge. So more people will. It's a true out and out freebie. This one is a bit of a strange freebie. Madhavan wants to come in quickly on this. One sec, yes.
I think, Tamanna, it's very important to understand that we cannot simply address it in terms of vote bank. The point is that just as let's face the truth, political parties tend to favor business groups or lobbies that give them good donations. Now, government employees are a sort of a hidden lobby who can block your delivery of government services or support you in so many ways. Army people, school teachers, government employees have hidden power that is not vote power. This is what I call modern Jagirdari. Earlier, Jagirdars and Talukdars used to be rewarded by rulers, Rajas. Today, today we have what I call corporate Zamindari and government Jagirdari. We seem to have modernized on paper, but the culture doesn't change. So we need a deeper cultural insight for which we don't seem to be inclined, because everybody is so busy learning economics in Harvard that they don't understand their own history and culture. This is part of the westernization problem we have. We are not looking at our own culture properly enough. We need more sociologists and anthropologists in policy design, as I keep saying.
I don't know how it's going to help in this particular case. Deepak
First of all, you have to change the philosophy of governance itself.
Okay, Deepak has a point he wants to make. Yes, Deepak.
Yeah.
Talk politics all day long. In the end, we're going to pay for it. No, in the end,
Exactly.
Exactly.
You have to pay because
for free.
Let me come in. Vote is a hidden financial and fiscal instrument. We are pretending, we are being hypocritical about not measuring the economic value of every vote in terms of, there is no think tank doing this. I'm planning to get this done, and the day I come with these figures, the country will be shaken, I can tell you.
Okay, so that is fine. But the fact is that if you bring the old pension scheme back, your states will get even more beggared. Is that a fact or not? But Deepak, if I were to try and present a different point of view, the fact is that political parties make promises which will go down well with people because it's something they need. Government employees and members of this movement that Tejas spoke about often believe that their pensions are unable to keep up with the expense of the time. The moment you don't have a guaranteed pension amount and it's being invested, say, in equity or in other kind of investment scenarios where you're not sure if you'll get the money back, it's at risk. They're saying after being government employees, why shouldn't we have a secure pension? Isn't there some merit to that concern?
Well, they have secure jobs. Nobody else gets secure jobs. So why should we also secure their pension as a country? We should also secure. Everybody else also wants the same security, no? I also want मेरे को every month please
But
somebody keep
government employees don't
buying
make
my.
as much as you do. I mean, let's be honest.
Well,
It's a
it's
service
not
they're
true.
providing.
No. Let me
Well,
come in.
let's put it this way. I don't think that government employees make less because they have seen a significant jump in
Exact fixed
salaries.
commission.
Yeah, and
Right.
and let me put things slightly another way. The reason why states want this pension money now is not only because they want to beggar themselves at a later stage, but it's also because they want to go to PFRDA and say, "Jitna tumne collect kiya hai for the last, how much ever money you've collected for the last for 20 years, please give it to us so we can spend it all now, because that's a big corpus they can get out of it right now, and let somebody else take care of the pensions." It's also about the money that they think they can get out of PFRDA, which PFRDA has rightfully rejected, and center has said, we're not going to give you back that money just because you want to go back to the.
Yes, they just wanted to come in. Yes.
Yeah, Tamanna, there was a larger debate going on in the Supreme Court regarding freebies and
Yes.
populism, as Madhavan pointed out. That this is a freebie, this is populism. Now, I certainly believe that this is the right opportunity for the Supreme Court to be proactive and ask the committee, which is, going to see the entire thing, I think the finance committee, whatever they're planning, that does this, because this is happening right at the time of elections. Right at the time of elections, this is exactly what the Supreme Court is talking about. And I think it makes very, it would be great jurisprudence by the senior most, court of the land to take this up very, very seriously, because this has long-term impact. 20, 30 years down the line, Arvind Kejriwal may not be there, but, his party or other political leaders governments will not be able to pay that pension.
No, they'll kick it down further down the road. The question is that in a democratic society, if they're making promises that voters like, they are free to make it. Mythili, is the economic counter really going to make a difference in the big picture?
Well, Tamanna, frankly, the Supreme Court should not be looking into the matter of freebies at all.
Yeah.
It is entirely a matter which is not in the jurisdiction domain at all. It is entirely in the political economic domain, something to be decided by the rulers and the population of the country, the people who are voting them in. So frankly, the Supreme Court should not be looking into the matter of freebies at all. So the suggestion that they should do this, I think we should completely, disregard it completely, not even entertain it. The question is that should states and should political parties show a certain sense of responsibility of maturity? Unfortunately, in India, many political parties lack the maturity, and the population is not able to see beyond the short-term gains. The fact is that this is a race to the bottom. It has to be completely condemned and nipped in the bud at the moment. Unfortunately, as I said, this is political populism, fiscal populism, which is going to really destroy state finances. And ultimately, if the center also goes down the path, it will be the path of no return. So it should be completely nipped in the bud. And the argument that government employees need to be treated separately, why are political parties scared of them? It is simply because they are able to make much more noise about it. The government really just has to look them in the eye and they will back down. Just as in the case of the Agnipath scheme, when the government showed that it was going to stand its ground, you've seen people coming for recruitment, even though the scheme did not have the kind of pensionary benefits as before. So the government just needs to stand firm. But unfortunately, political parties in India lack the maturity to do so, and they're doing the people of this country a very, very bad turn by this fiscal irresponsibility.
Yeah. I want to look at it from this point of view. We talked about future generations paying the price of this. Madhavan, this old pension scheme is effectively benefiting a part of the population who has retired and who right now as a priority wants to live a comfortable life in a rising inflation scenario. Are they really the people that we're expecting to be worried about who's going to pay this bill 20 years down the line or 30 years down the line?
Yeah, actually, they should be morally worrying about it. But what happens typically? I'll tell you a couple of funny things and then make a serious point here. The funny thing is that the children of government employees rarely work for the government in India. They use the government job as a security, as a springboard and then they go into corporate jobs. This I've observed anecdotally. It could be probably statistically verifiable. It's all part of the game called upward mobility. But having put that aside, let me say a couple of things, which is that we need something like a Fiscal Responsibility and Management Act at the state level. Historically, this has been done through the Finance Commission, which from time to time imposes fiscal regulations on states, and also the Reserve Bank of India. We need to look at how the central government can look at that, and Supreme Court may want to weigh in, because Supreme Court has a responsibility of public interest, where whether it's freebies or whether it is fiscal responsibility concerning pensions, it can definitely make general observations that can be used, because the constitutional responsibility of the Supreme Court is such that you can actually make fiscal responsibility part of it, so much so that you can say electoral populism cannot cross a certain limit.
Exactly.
This is one way of looking at the matter.
The limit, then we go into a whole different question.
No,
Who
one
will
They
define
already
the
are
limit?
looking at it. They already are looking at
Yeah,
this
so,
in
so that is
the
basically
continuation.
to Mythili's point. Then the Supreme Court can have its own constitutional view on long-term stability of financial, because if financial emergency comes under this constitution, so does the potential financial emergency.
You know where it gets tricky, where the whole freebies debate gets tricky, that who do you put in charge in deciding who can promise what? If it's going
Exactly.
to be,
So,
for example, the central government, which is run by an ex-party, how do you ensure that they will not use that power to not let opposition parties make promises that will help them win elections? Very simply put, I'm breaking it down to its bare bones. That's the concern. How will you ensure it does not skew the democratic process?
There is.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Let me come in. The pay commission, Deepak Shenoy made an excellent point, which is that, see, historically, there is a very interesting point. Government jobs are supposed to give you less salary, but higher security and pension, so that apple on apple, people with comparable skills trade lower salaries for higher security and pension. That has been broken by what I call the pay commission syndrome, where the pay commission tends to equate government salaries with corporate jobs at some level, using some criteria like inflation, and that needs to be questioned. So the pay commission and the finance commission are the two levers through which the central government can do it, but it cannot do it purely through political processes. You need a national consensus on this, for which the Supreme Court and overall parliamentary consensus is essential, along with the Fiscal Responsibility Act.
If the court was looking for examples of what could be a potentially dangerous quote-unquote freebie, they have one here. There is a whole host of promises being made to revert to the old pension scheme. It is being cheered on, and there is no political party who, as of now, is coming out and saying it's a bad idea. No one wants to take that risk with crucial state elections up ahead. So interesting space to watch. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us today on the discussion and breaking down why this is a very, very important story.